There is a particular loneliness that only happens in the presence of another person. You are lying beside someone, the room is warm, the arrangement is correct, everything you once said you wanted is there in the bed with you, breathing, and a cold thought arrives without permission, and it will not leave. I do not know who this is. Not in the way of strangers, in a stranger way than that. As though someone you loved has quietly left the body that is still lying next to you, and what remains is a person you have somehow never met. Here is the thing almost no one will say out loud. The one who left was never entirely there. What you fell in love with on that first bright impossible night was not this person. It was something of your own, thrown outward and landing on them. The way a film lands on a screen, you were not seeing them. You were seeing the part of yourself you were never allowed to live wearing their face, and it was beautiful, and it was electric, and it was real in the way a fever is real, but it was not them. This is not a talk about finding a better partner. You have tried better partners. The same silence arrives in the same bed a year later, wearing new hair. This is about the thing underneath all of it. Why the human heart reaches for another person, the way a missing half reaches for its other side. Why the reaching so often ends in disappointment. And what love turns into on the far side of that disappointment, if you are brave enough to stay. Because the disappointment is not the end of love. It is where love has been waiting to begin. No child arrives divided. A child at the beginning is a whole small weather system, fierce and tender in the same hour, bold at breakfast and frightened by dark, wanting, refusing, softening, raging, all of it moving freely through one small body that has not yet learned that any of it is forbidden. And then the learning starts. It rarely comes as a rule, it comes as a face, the look that crossed your mother's face the day you needed too much, the way the room cooled when you cried, the joke your father made about boys who feel things, and how you laughed along, and something in you went quiet and did not speak again for 30 years. Somewhere in there you took a survey of yourself, and you found the parts that were welcome and the parts that were not, and you did the only intelligent thing available to a small person who needs to be kept. You kept the acceptable half, and the other half you sent away. For one child, the exiled half is softness, need, tears, the wish to be held without having to earn it. He learns to be capable, and capable becomes a country he cannot leave. For another, the exiled half is anger, appetite, the blunt, ugly word for what she actually wants. She learns to be lovely and accommodating, and the wanting goes underground and turns into a hunger with no name. But nothing you exile ever actually dies. That is the part the arrangement did not mention. It goes down into the dark, and it keeps growing down there, unlived, unspent, gathering pressure like water behind a wall. And because you have made it impossible to feel it as your own, it does the only other thing it can do. It goes looking for a body. It waits, patient as a seed, for the day you walk into a room and see someone carrying, out in the open and without apology, the exact thing you buried. The man who never cries meets the woman who weeps at everything, and something in his chest detonates. The woman who never asks meets the man who takes up all the air in the room, and she cannot breathe and cannot look away. And you will call that recognition, you will call it fate or chemistry or the sense of having known them before. You have. You just have not known them. You have known the part of you they are carrying. Carl Jung gave this its true name, and the name is not romantic. He called it projection. Projection is what the psyche does with anything it cannot hold as its own. It puts it outside, it finds a hook in the world, some real feature of a real person, and it hangs the unlived material there, and then it experiences that material as belonging to them. The whole thing happens beneath the level of choice. You do not decide to project. You simply look up one day and a person across a room is glowing, and you have no idea that you are the source of the light. Jung went further, and this is the part that reorganizes everything. He said that inside every man there lives an image of the feminine, and inside every woman an image of the masculine, built partly from the mother or father he first knew, partly from the culture, and partly from the whole long inheritance of the species. He called them the anima and the animus. They are not people. They are the shape of your own unlived half, the interior other, the counterweight to whatever you were permitted to become, and they carry enormous voltage because they are made of everything you have not been allowed to be. So when a living human being happens to fit the outline closely enough, the image leaps onto them. All of it, every year of the unlived life goes flying out of you and lands on a person who is, in fact, just a person, with bad knees and a phone full of unanswered messages. And they light up like a screen in a dark theatre, and the film you are watching is your own. This is the ecstasy at the start, not intimacy. Recognition of the self, mistaken for knowledge of the other. Alan Watts came at the same wall from the mystic side. He said the deepest error a human being can make is the belief that he is a separate ego, a skin-encapsulated self, sealed off inside his own head and looking out at a world of foreign objects. And the loneliness that follows from that belief is not a mood. It is structural. It is what that belief feels like from the inside. So we go looking for a cure in another person. We try to end our separateness by acquiring someone. And Watts saw the trap in it perfectly, because the moment you make another person the cure for your loneliness, you have made them a possession, and you cannot possess a person and love them at the same time. You will begin gently at first to require them to stay exactly as they were on the night the film first played. And they will not, because they are alive, and a living thing will not hold still for your projection. Erich Fromm put the ordinary sentence under a light and showed us what we had been admitting all along. We say falling in love. We do not say standing in love, or building it, or practicing it. We say falling, which is something that happens to you, which requires nothing of you, which is over the moment the ground arrives. Fromm's claim was simple and unwelcome. Love is not a feeling you fall into. It is a capacity you develop, an art with a discipline like any other, and the reason so many people fail at it is that they have spent their lives working on becoming lovable rather than on becoming able to love. They perfect the bait, they never learn the craft. And so they stand in the wreckage of a fourth relationship, certain the problem is supply. Certain that somewhere out there is a person who will finally fit. And Rilke, who understood loneliness better than anyone who ever wrote about love, said the thing that holds all of it together. That love is not two people dissolving into one. It is two solitudes that border and protect and salute each other. Two, not one, the border stays. The whole task is learning to guard the other person's aloneness instead of trying to end your own with it. Which brings us to the sentence nobody wants. The honeymoon does not end because something went wrong. It ends because something went right. A projection has a shelf life. It has to. No living person can carry another person's unlived half indefinitely, because a projection is a costume and the human being underneath it keeps moving. So one ordinary Tuesday she says something the image would never say. He does something small and human and entirely his own, and the film slips off the screen, and for one vertiginous second you see the actual person standing there. And the feeling that arrives is not curiosity, it is grief. Sometimes it is rage. Because in that instant, without understanding what has happened, you have lost the most valuable thing you had, and it was never theirs to give back. Watch what the mind does next, because it does the same thing in almost every human being. It does not conclude, I was seeing my own material. It concludes, they changed. They are not who they were. They tricked me. I have fallen out of love. And so begins the long campaign to get the film back on the screen, which we conduct under the name of trying. You asked them to be more like they used to be. You are wounded by their ordinariness. You keep score, and every request is really the same request, whispered underneath the words, please go back to carrying my missing half, because I cannot bear to carry it myself. And when that fails, as it must, there is one more move available, and our whole culture is arranged to help you make it. Leave. Find someone new. The voltage is instant and unmistakable, and it feels exactly like proof. Proof that this one is different, that the last one was the mistake, that you have finally arrived. But look at what actually happened. The unlived half came flying home the moment the old projection collapsed, and it will not stay home. It went straight back out and found a new hook. Nothing in you has changed. You have simply built a new screen and started the same film. This is why the same relationship keeps happening to people with different names and different faces, decade after decade, until they begin to suspect the universe is persecuting them. It is not. They are watching their own reel. And here is the cruelest turn of it, the one that costs the most. The very thing that thrilled you at the beginning is almost always the thing you will come to resent. He fell for her feeling, her weather, the way she cried at things. And in year 4 he calls her too much, too emotional, exhausting. She fell for his certainty, his weight in a room. And in year 4 she calls him rigid, cold, impossible to reach. They have not fallen out of love with each other. They have run into their own exiled half, out there in the open, wearing another face, and they are doing to it exactly what was done to it originally. Rejecting it, sending it away. The war in the kitchen at 11 at night is an old war. It began long before either of them was in the room. And underneath all of it, doing quiet damage the whole time, is the demand nobody says out loud. Complete me. Be the half I lost. Be the parent who did it right. Fill the shape that has been empty in me since before I could speak. It is an unpayable debt handed to a person who was never told the terms, and no amount of their love will ever settle it, because the debt was never theirs. You can be adored by someone for 20 years and still feel it, if the one who needed to come home never came home. For most people, the turn does not arrive as an insight. It arrives as an ending. Sometimes it is a real ending, a door and a car and a silence in a house that used to have noise in it. Sometimes it is quieter and harder. The two of them stay and something between them dies anyway, and they sit across a table from a person they no longer recognize in the ruins of a story they both believed. Whatever form it takes, the same thing is happening underneath. The fantasy is dying. The image is coming down off the person. And it feels like the death of love only because you never once had the chance to learn the difference. Jung would not have called this a failure. He would have called it the beginning of the actual work, and the work has a name that sounds like nothing and asks for everything. Withdrawing the projection. Which means standing in the wreckage and asking a question so simple it takes years to answer. What did I see in them that I could not find in myself? And the answers come slowly, and they are humbling. The tenderness you adored in her is your own tenderness, exiled at 7 years old and never allowed home. The strength you needed from him is your own strength. Disowned so long ago you genuinely believed you were born without it. Everything you were reaching for across that space between two bodies was already inside you, in the dark, waiting to be claimed, and the person you blamed for withholding it never had it in the first place. They were only ever standing in the place where you were pointing. This is the death Jung called necessary. And it is a real death, and it should be grieved. Something genuinely ends here. The dream that another person will arrive and finish you. The oldest and sweetest story you were ever told. The one every song reinforces. The one you have been organizing your life around since you were young enough to believe it without checking. Letting it go can feel like losing the possibility of love altogether. It is the opposite. What dies is the demand. And the demand was the thing standing between you and the other person the entire time, because on the far side of that, something becomes possible that was not possible before. You look up one day and see them. Not the screen, the person, tired, particular, difficult, mortal. Made of a history that has nothing to do with you, carrying wounds you did not cause and cannot heal. Not your missing half, not your cure, just another whole and unfinished human being, standing in their own weather, doing their best in a life that is as strange and unasked for as your own. And the astonishing thing, the thing nobody warns you about, is that this is when love actually starts. It is quieter than the fever, it does not detonate, it has none of the vertigo and none of the certainty. But it is the first thing in the whole long story that is not a mirror. It is the first time you have loved someone who is actually there. There is an old idea, older than psychology, that we are each of us halved, and that somewhere out in the world the other half is walking around, waiting to be found. It is the most beautiful wrong thing we have ever believed. The half is real, the loss is real. The ache that sends you across a room toward a stranger is one of the truest things in a human life, and it should never be dismissed. But the half was never out there. It went into the dark inside you the first time you learned which parts of yourself were welcome, and it has been down there ever since, and the only person who can go and get it is you. And this is the strange arithmetic at the center of it. The moment you stop asking another person to be your missing half, you become capable of loving them for the first time. Not before. Jung saw that the whole aim of a life is individuation, the long, unhurried work of becoming the whole person you already are, and that until you begin it, every relationship you enter will be an unconscious attempt to have someone else do it for you. Watt saw that the loneliness we try to cure with another person comes from believing we are separate in the first place, and that the cure was never acquisition. It was waking up. Fromm saw that love is not a fortunate accident that happens to the deserving. It is an art, practiced by whoever is willing to practice. And Rilke saw the finished shape of it, two solitudes bordering, protecting, saluting, never dissolving. So if you are the one lying awake beside someone tonight, wondering where they went, or the one lying awake alone waiting for someone to arrive and start your life, it is the same waiting, and the person you are waiting for is not late. Go down into the dark and find the half you sent away. Bring back the softness, bring back the anger, bring back the wanting you were taught to be ashamed of. Not so that you will finally be worthy of love, so that you will finally have hands free enough to give it. Two whole people can love each other. Two halves can only hold on. And the one you have been looking for your entire life was never on the other side of the room. They were on the other side of the wall you built inside yourself, waiting for you to come home.